Okay, so this is where part 3 picks up. We are screwing some 2x4s into the walls, and that'll give it some more support because our studs and our walls are 24 inches apart instead of 16 inches apart, and that is kind of why our walls were curving in. But when we add these 2x4s, it'll give our walls some more support and it won't curve in anymore. So here we had just went and got some new drywall, and we are going to replace that piece that we cut out, and this piece right here is for the smaller hole. So here we're cutting out the piece for the big hole, and the big hole was a little bit more challenging to cut out, but we figured it out. So after we had cut out the big piece, unfortunately we realized fairly quickly that that piece was a little bit too big, so we ended up having to cut some of it off like you see right here. And when we did that, it pretty much fit perfectly fine, and we didn't have to do anything else except screw it down and start mudding it. And so as you can see here, I am scraping out the bottom, and then I had to flip the piece of drywall a couple times just to see which way fit better. So at this point the hole was almost ready for the new piece of drywall to go in, but we just had to clean up this edge and then we could fit it perfectly into place. Well, almost perfectly, that is. There was a small gap, so we ended up putting a 2x4 up in there. And I screwed it down, and I screwed it onto this board, and it held really well. And then I also took a smaller piece of drywall to cover up this hole that the arrow is pointing to, where there's a wire there, and I just took a small piece of drywall, cut it to fit, and then I got my mud and I mudded the rest of the wall. So I am not an expert at doing drywall mud. However, it is important to learn, so I tried my best to pay attention to all the YouTube videos I watched. And it also wasn't my first time doing drywall, so. As you can see, it is the next morning, and we sanded it down. There wasn't much sanding to do, but there was some. And so the only real suggestion I could give you is that when you apply your mud, try to make sure there is no hills or mounds, and it'll make it a lot easier to sand. So here we are putting a clear coat of polyurethane over the cedar boards that we had chose. We were trying to do this quickly because it was going to rain, and we didn't want to have that smell of the nasty polyurethane in our house and not be able to vent it out because of the rain. So we just decided we'll just do it on the porch, which is covered, and hopefully we get done by the time it starts raining. And we did, so. Okay, so here I got straight to work putting up the shiplap. Unfortunately, I thought that the camera was recording when I started putting it up, but it wasn't. So I got all the way up until the plug-in when I realized that it wasn't recording. And in case you were wondering, I did turn off the power to the outlet before I started messing with the outlet itself. And so after I had turned off the power to the outlet, I was able to cut the pieces and fit them around the outlet. So as you're putting the boards on the walls, make sure to stagger your boards so none of them line up. Okay, so this is where we kind of had started to have some problems. We forgot to pre-measure and our wall wasn't really level, so I ended up taking the trim off and like moving it up some just so it could fill in that gap, and it didn't really help. So we took some extra pieces and just cut some small thin strips to fit inside that small little gap. The good thing was that it was on top of the window there, so nobody would really notice it. As you can see, you can't even really notice it here as we're doing it up close. You really can't notice it from far away either. That was really the only difficult place we had since we did the plug-in. So here I went to the section next to the wall and finished that little strip and then did the top. Okay, so this is where things kind of started to get confusing because at this point we had to match the pieces up to where they would fit underneath the trim but also would line up with the ceiling, and I was kind of getting frustrated because it was definitely a game of Tetris at this point, cutting out all these little tiny pieces, trying to make them fit into a shape that they need to go in was very difficult. Two of the pieces did end up lining up, which wasn't what I was planning on doing, but that's kind of how it happened. Okay, so at this point I had one small little square left, and then I stepped back and looked at the wall, and I did not like this brown piece right there, so I took it out and I switched it. It was kind of risky, but it worked out great in the end, so it didn't really matter. almost done, but the living room's not. Stay tuned for our final video of our living room reveal. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell. Bye!